Hello, welcome. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming this early to a Saturday morning 9 a.m. talk. I'd like to thank BostonFIG for making this great event. And can everybody see me? You might have to click on my picture at the top to make it full screen. My name is Michael McMahon, and I'm talking about my work with Ghost City Games today. This isn't going to be about the content of the game very much. It's not going to be about game mechanics. It's going to be about licensing games under free culture licenses. We made a game called Midnight Riders. It's a zine. It's only a few pages. You can read the instructions yourself. You can get the physical copy on our Square store. You can download the PDF on our drive-through RPG. You can also download it for free through our GitHub. And we also have the tools to build your own epub. And we have the tools to that we use to play test and test the game mechanics for the game. We're the only tabletop role-playing game that I know of that has published the source materials that we use to make the game itself. There are some free culture games that have released the final product, but we have actually released most of the things that we have used to create the entire game. So it's kind of like a playtesting engine. So if you try to go to our website right now, it is down. I tried to do too many things at once this week. So it's going to be up later today. But our GitHub is up, our Square store is up. We just have a lot of links, and I needed to put them all in one place. So it will be on ghostcitygames.com. So let's start with what is a tabletop role-playing game. I'm just going to go over this quickly because a lot of people don't know. Some people say, is it like Dungeons and Dragons? That's the most popular tabletop role-playing game by far. This is much simpler. To play Dungeons and Dragons, you need several rule books, one person that is just running the game. The players need to go through an entire manual to build a character sheet. We do have a character sheet, but it's simple. It's one page. The contents are just flavor and keeping score. So all you need is some polyhedral dice and some friends, the rules, and a couple hours. Dungeons and Dragons might take several months. This game only takes one day. So if you've got a game group going, it's actually a very nice game to play. Sometimes schedules don't line up. Somebody drops out. You have some friends coming over anyway. Why don't you try Midnight Riders? You don't actually need the D20. You just need the D4, D6, D8, D10, D12. So what is free culture? The easiest way that I have found to show what free culture is with what's called the 4 GNUs. Now, this is a shirt design that the Free Software Foundation here in Boston has on their store. The link is at the bottom. And I don't know the license for this picture, but it very accurately describes what is free culture and what is free software. It gives the user and other developers, all people, the ability to run, edit, contribute, and share a piece of work. Now, this piece of work could be a manual, it could be a game, it could be the code for a game, it could be a picture. The pictures are the only thing in our game that is not free culture. The entire manual, And the process to make the manual, the process to make the game, develop the game, it's all free culture or free software. What is a free culture license that I would suggest? I use the Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike license, the 4.0 international version. There are several Creative Commons licenses, and I'm going to go through them briefly. There's the Creative Commons license Spectrum, made by Shatum, and it is under the Creative Commons Attribution license. So at the very bottom, you have copyright. Now, copyright is the default, and most games are copyright. They do not give you the permission to change them whatsoever. There are exceptions to that. You can't copyright a game mechanic. An example is tile matching games. Tetris is a very classic old game, and blocks drop from the top, and you match a row, and then they go away. There are plenty of Tetris clones. I think the name is trademarked, but you can use that concept in other games. That continued on through Bejeweled is another popular one. Bejeweled was a grid of blocks that you swapped a block, and then you made a match of 3 or more, and then blocks would fall from the top, and then you would make more matches. This continued with mobile phones. People made Candy Crush. Candy Crush is the same concept as Bejeweled, but in a slightly different format. Candy Crush is not infringing on the rights of Bejeweled, because you cannot copyright or patent a game mechanic. Above this, so that really brings into the question of what can be copyrighted, what can be Creative Commons, what can be free culture in your game. And a lot of it already is. But let's go a step further. You can add more permissions. You call copyright, and then you can give up some of these permissions, some of these rights. So above that, we have the share yellow column. This is not licenses I would suggest. These are no derivative licenses. So people are allowed to share, which is one of the freedoms, but you can't change the work. You can only distribute the work. That's no good when you're trying to build a community around something. You want to be able to modify the game. So above this, we have non-commercial licenses. This is the light green section. Now, non-commercial licenses are very popular, and I do not think that they should exist. And here's why. On the surface level, it seems very good. XKCD is a popular thing that uses non-commercial. Several music artists use non-commercial. And prevents other people from selling your thing, your creative work, verbatim as their own. Now, they can't actually say that they wrote it themselves, but they can just sell your things. So on the surface, that seems like a bad thing, but it's actually prohibitive to the free culture concept. Say you're building a community around your game. If you have a few people that wrote it and it's non-commercial, that seems fine. Now your community grows and you have 30 people that have contributed to your non-commercial project. Now it's something that's really great. And it's a polished product that you want to sell. Can you sell it? You have to get permission from all of the 30 people that contributed to it. if these are strangers on the internet that you don't know, finding the 30 people that contributed to your project might be impossible. So it's better if you just start off by having a free culture license with all of the freedoms. And this is at the top of the chart. I'm going to enhance. All right, we have the Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike, which is my favorite license. Then we have the Creative Commons Attribution, which just requires you to credit the person or creators that made the work. And then above that, you have Public Domain CC0, which requires nothing. These are all free culture licenses, but only the Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike license has the 4 freedoms built into the downstream projects. You could have a great upstream project that is free culture, and then the derivative works might be proprietary. So these, you might have a huge community around this one project, but if none of the downstream projects are contributing back to the upstream project, what kind of a community do you actually have? And does the original work have anything to show for these community projects? That's a problem. So if you start with the Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike license, you can build a community around something, you can have people modifying it, and if the modifications improve the work, you can bring them back to upstream, whether they've actually made the contribution upstream or not. The other license is more focused on software. All of my code is licensed under the AGPL v3 license, which stands for the Affero GNU Public License version 3. And also I add on to that or later licenses. So this, you never know how your project is going to end up. So our game engine code is under the AGPL v3 license. Now, the GPL v3 is a variation of this license, and it's very good. But the A part of this license affects networking. So if somebody makes a website that uses your code or your game, people that are using your website aren't downloading your code. So this makes sure that even if it's just a website, the result is still free culture, and you can still get the contributions from downstream projects. So this is a preview of the output of our game engine. I had jury duty one day here in Boston, and I had my phone on me, and I had a lot of downtime. And I made a working draft of our game. Now, our role-playing game, Midnight Riders, it's very simple. There's no really complex stat blocks. Each character has 2 stats to keep track of. And they both start at 0, and they're called Madness and Reputation. Madness is how crazy your character becomes, and Reputation is how infamous your character becomes. Now, this may not make sense because you don't know the game, but it's a supernatural biker gang battle. There are no dungeon masters. Everybody plays the game. And it's collaborative, it's storytelling, and it's very simple. You can play it in 2 hours. So this table illustrates the different events or like turns. Everybody gets a turn. In these turns, we're called scenes. And this is generated by random choice. Every character is making random decisions. They're making battles. They're picking fights. And this is one way that it can go. Now, I was able to understand this chart, but nobody else was. So I added a graph, and this made it much faster to interpret the results of a game. So we had to ask ourselves, what makes a game fun? Comebacks are fun. If you're losing the entire way, that's no fun. So there has to be some sort of balance. There has to be incentive. And you don't want to get just stuck at the bottom. So if you look at this chart, it looks like green is having a not fun time, but each character has 2 stats. So maybe their reputation was much better. This was an early draft of the rules. It's better than it was then. But in general, the graphs should be going onwards and upwards. If the majority of the lines are going to the top, then that's going to be a good game. Here are some references that I used to make this talk. At the top, we have the free culture definition. You can also check out the free software definition on GNU.org. And then there's the AGPL license. There's the Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike license. The tree of Creative Commons licenses is on the free works page. Our website doesn't work right now, but it will soon. GitHub.com/GhostCityGames has all of our code. And I want to end a little early so we'd have some time for Q&A. I see some people are here in the room. So if you have any questions, come up to the Q&A podium, and if you have a microphone, you can ask it there. If you don't have a microphone, you can type in the chat. That works too. We have about 10 minutes, maybe a little less. If there's no questions, I can talk a bit about the game with a code. I don't have that demo on this machine. Well, I'll start by asking you some questions. Do you know of any free culture board games, role-playing games, computer games? Can you think of any? If you can, put them in the chat. I know of a few. Tux Racer is a cool one. It's kind of like Mario Kart. You can play it on any computer. Very fun. It's got multiplayer. There's a Frozen Bubble. That's a fun one. You can play network play. Mind Test is one of the best. It's very similar to a proprietary game where you build things with blocks. There's a great series going on right now. Hacker Public Radio is a podcast, and Klaatu is a podcaster. His podcast is Good New World Order, and he's got a game group, and they're reviewing free culture games, and it's very entertaining. They've played a couple cool ones. Some of them are more like Dungeons and Dragons, stripped down rules. Uh-oh, my computer froze. I don't know if you can still hear me, but I can't see you now.
I can still hear you.
All right, great. Looks like it's come back. That usually doesn't happen. I turned off the stream. I was double streaming there. All right. Looks like I'm back. All right. See, we have a question. Robert? Looks like you're muted.
Quick question for you.
Sure.
How did you change your game as a result of the simulations that you ran?
So the simulations were mostly focused on the scoring. So we have a table about midway through the game. Let's see. I don't know if that'll show up. We have this table, and it says what level you're at and what kind of a fight you're in, what kind of points you'll get. So it started off very unbalanced, and we ran several thousand of these simulations, and I was able to try out different scores very quickly, very iteratively. So the problem that I was trying to address was our game took 2 hours to play. And we were trying to target a zine festival in North Carolina for our initial release. And we didn't have enough time to play once a week, one game, and make the rules good for our first release. So this game engine really helped us be able to make a quality product in a short amount of time. So it was mostly iterative score adjustments. Now there's a lot more that I can do with it. It's got Python language, so there's a whole lot of data analysis tools. It's a whole field of study. You could apply machine learning to this very easily. That's not really my focus, so I got it to a good enough point where I could have it run for about a minute, make enough graphs for me to get a gist of it. And then I could just cycle through the graphs, get a visual. Are the numbers going onwards and upwards? If they are more flat, then it's not a fun game. People are losing. People aren't making comebacks. So it's very fine, minute, referential scoring. So I was able to find patterns in the numbers and adjust those patterns with code pretty simply.
It sounds as if the simulation is very specific to your particular game. How adaptable would it be to other RPGs that might do things a little bit differently?
Right. So this is very specific to our game. But if you're using dice or any type of random tool, like a deck of cards or so forth, you could change our code to match up with whatever type of dice you're using. We're just using the standard D4, D6, D8, D12. But you could change the code to a D100 or the D20 or the D3s. As you add more complexity, the code is going to get more complex. We only had 2 stats and 6 turns, where everybody got a six turns. So ours was not that difficult to model. but you could extrapolate on this system. Modeling like Dungeons and Dragons would be very complex, but you could model slightly more complex games pretty easily by modifying the code. And I used to be a teacher in an after-school center teaching kids Python programming. So I put a lot of comments in the code. So I kind of aimed the project to be for non-programmers. The rest of the co-authors were not programmers, and they were able to at least understand what's going on in the code. They might not understand the code, but they'll understand what each block is doing because it's labeled with comments. I think that's very important.
Thank you so much for commenting your code. That's really, really appreciated. I look forward to reading some of it. And I was wondering if you knew of any other open source game emulation tools that might have been models for what you did or inspirations.
There are some frameworks,
approaches.
but I didn't look into those. I learned about them after I made mine. So I'm out of time. Thank you very much. I'll be around so we can continue this chat later.